Okay, then maybe we move to the next, which is the panel. And this panel is going to be about loyalty and a customer centricity booster in the move to modern retailing. So it will be moderated by our very own Danielle Colla, who is the product senior manager, customer excellence at Amadeus. And we will have our panelists with us. So Alexandra Christopoulou from Aegean Airlines. She is the customer value and loyalty director. Then we will have Nina with us from McKinsey and company. Then we will have Anastasia from Global Loyalty Organization. She is one of the co-founders from the company. Then we will have Robert Booth from Amadeus, the Director of Product Commercial Excellence. And last but not least, our Nicola Arnese, the Director of Product Customer and Loyalty. Now, I want to welcome you on the stage. Please.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. So let's get straight at it. So as you know, this is about what can loyalty help with the customer-centric retailing transformation. My first question will be to Anastasia from GLO, and I'd like to also hear afterwards from Nina. What do you see as the current state of loyalty and retailing in the airline industry? So we touched upon that a little in the presentation, but I'll ask you to expand a bit. Do you see any live evidence of synergies between loyalty and retailing? And what are the latest program evolutions and predictions in the loyalty space as pertains ideally to the retailing aspect?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Amadeus, for getting us all together into this room live to debate and to share insights. Global Loyalty Organization runs the predictions annual survey, which usually includes 30 plus experts from the loyalty industries, airline, hospitality, as well as solution providers. And we also recently have done 2 loyalty panels for the airlines in Dubai and Miami. So I'll just base some of my observations on that. So airline retailing and loyalty is completely intertwined at the moment. We do still, in the structure of organization, significant gaps between the coordination of the efforts. And the reason of the gaps is that technology is moving so fast that the airlines are not able to invest and actually implement some of the technological advances. So the first and foremost I want to mention is that currently airlines are focusing predominantly on 3 generations: baby boomers, millennials, and Generation X. So that's majority of sitting in this room. Within the 5 to 7 years, the majority of your customers will be Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And we tend to think about this generation as relatively poor, not enough of wealth, and not able to invest and purchase a lot. Interestingly, they will receive 57 trillion of wealth inherited from their parents in the coming 10 years. So that group will be your key customers, and majority of the focus of the airlines should be thinking, where do we invest today to capture these customers? That includes retailing. I can talk about a little bit more patterns within this group later, but that would be my first takeaway. So focus on your customer, which is not today. Focus it who will be your customer in 5 and 7 years, and invest now.
Yeah, I'm happy to add on from our perspective. I think, state of retailing, I think Jasperina summarized it quite well. It is obviously happening. I think the debate is over where the industry is still discussing, is this happening? I think it's more a question of when and how. I think realistically, though, there are a couple of real front runners in the industry that have been quite advanced in their investments and have gone towards, I think what we're seeing in like the end state vision of more dynamic offers that actually require loyalty and customer insights to make sure that what you're putting together under the multiple options is actually the relevant offer for the customer that is shopping or traveling with you. So I think that is still very much a vision that is out there for most airlines. From our perspective, there's still quite a way to go for most airlines to bring loyalty and the whole, retailing commercial organizations much closer together. Of course, there are different ways how it's organized at different airlines. I'm sure you represent all the different spots on the spectrum. But in terms of weaving in the insights from a loyalty organization into the way you communicate, engage customers, provide offers, engage more broadly, and no matter the situation, yes, Brina mentioned irregular operations, right? These are critical for customer experience and loyalty. I think there's still a massive way to go. And a lot of the, let's say, practices in, for example, pricing, revenue management, etc., are so much built around analytical IP that doesn't take a lot of external customer data into account. That, from my perspective, is a huge opportunity, and we're only starting to see the beginnings of what it could mean.
Thank you both. So then I'll turn to Alexandra from Aegean. What is Aegean doing on the modern retailing, and how is it impacting what you're doing in the loyalty space?
Yes. First of all, Aegean, we believe a lot on the modern retailing, and we are doing cautious steps towards this direction. In terms of the loyalty where I lead, we have made a transformation, a switch, I would say, over the last years. And we have switched from the traditional loyalty program management to the customer value management. So we are investing a lot in the last 2 to 3 years in technology in order to do the absolutely basic that is required for the modern retailing, to have streamlined customer data that we get at real time across all our data sources, and that we will be able to analyze in very, very fast with modern technology, so that we can expose all this data to all the front-end e-retail systems, the systems that manage the regular operations, so that we have a central view of the customer across the entire organization. This is the key, I would say, the starting point to introduce the modern retailing. If you do not know your customer, you do not know fast enough so that you can take very fast decisions or on what to offer that is relevant at the right time, then e-retailing by itself cannot work.
Well, that was clear. Thank you, Alexandra. So start from the customer and as dynamic and real time as you can, have the customer 360 to influence everything afterwards. Well, thank you for that. Now I'll go back to maybe McKinsey and GLO. So what can we learn from other verticals about how they handle loyalty and in retailing as well? What can we learn from others?
So first and foremost, I would say that in airlines, you're definitely coming through amazing transformation from dominance of business travelers who were contributing quite a lot pre-COVID to significantly more leisure traveling. And that is going to continue because, again, the trends that we are seeing in the younger population is that they work more remotely, and the general company budgets are cut. Business travel is not as key. So if we look at some other industries, so for example, McKinsey had very interesting slide about Marriott Bonvoy, Sephora. All of these brands, they're trying to create communities. So again, I think that what Alexandra mentioned, at the moment, we're at the stage where airlines are creating the basic 360 customer views. The next step is actually investing in the digital channels that attract the customers to your super app or super platform or airline marketplace, if you want. So what we are seeing is that the young generation, or your main customer in 5 years, is triggered by 3 things. First is experiences. 72% will click on the ad which provides them an experience. They are not buying things, they are buying experiences. We will touch later upon that in one of the presentations. Secondly, they get information from the influencers. For example, in the case of Sephora that McKinsey mentioned, there was quite interesting presentation that they've done at World Retail Forum 2 weeks ago. They were saying all of their digital marketing is based on local communities and creating an events for local communities to come together and build this relationship. Partially because the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are much more disfranchised from the typical institutions of family, of church, and of the local community. They are much more digitally connected than locally connected. The third one is they're very easily influenced. They actually get information not from Google or books. They actually rely on financial and purchasing advice from the influencers. And the third one, they're a little bit more ethically and sustainably driven. So again, for example, in the case of Marriott or Radisson, and including in Sephora, we're seeing that sustainability programs, green collection, green choices are one of the top 3 hit points that they're trying to address. So I would say that these 3.
Okay. Nina, if you would like.
Yeah, I think you said it all. I would agree that you know, generally the airlines, I think, are viewing loyalty programs still very much as a way of facilitating a transaction, and maybe a bit of an after-sales process, but not so much the engagement throughout. And I think that is quite critical, especially if you think about the purchase frequency in the travel industry more broadly versus groceries. Even the Sephora example probably has a higher frequency, right? But I think also, you know, if you look at some of the hospitality players and like hotel chains, for example, I think they do a really good job at focusing on actually creating a very consistent and potentially sort of superior guest experience for a more loyal customer. So for example, if we go back to the Marriott example, the Bonvoy example, they have a lot of offerings that are very clear in terms of like room upgrades, late checkouts. It's very focused on just making the experience better versus necessarily focusing on the points and the revenue generation. Of course, that's part of the economics, but it's a very clear and consistent value proposition that helps them to keep you know, travelers within their chain ecosystem. I think there are also a few examples. I mean, we talked a lot about retail, but maybe from financial services. For example, banks, insurers that are using the loyalty program more for engagement on financial education, learning, more flexible rewards, but not so much focused on like the guest experience as you would see it with a hotel. So I think it's a very different focus, and there's a lot to learn from, not only in terms of how do I better align my earn burn schemes, but also just how do I make this more tangible for the customers in the everyday. And I think what's interesting for this industry is to think about how do I engage customers that maybe only travel with me once a year, but then, you know, for this one transaction or this one purchase, I make sure they actually fly with me versus my competitor.
Thank you, Nina. So our response in Amadeus is Nevio for the modern retailing trends, as Meg mentioned. So how do you see synergies, I'll ask both of my colleagues here, between Nevio and customer loyalty?
I start or you start? That's a good question. I think Meg at the beginning said very clear. I mean, that whatever offer we build, whatever order we deliver, I mean, does not make any sense if there is no customer behind. Okay, and before going into a technological conversation, I mean, I think technology at the end is an enabler. In our case, in Amadeus, we are also trying to advocate, to push the industry towards this transformation. But the relation that I see between the two, between the, let's say, core retailing transformation and the loyalty business is around the traveler, around the consumer. And if we try to stretch a bit the vision, I mean, what Nina said, it's one of the problems of this industry, you know, that the purchase repeatedly is very low. I mean, you travel beyond the frequent flyers. You really travel what, 1, 2 times per year? And most of the time, not even with the same carrier. The power that the loyalty programs brings is, to my view, 3 things. The ecosystem opportunity, because you can connect with your customers, no matter of if they fly or not on your aircraft, but you can still engage with your brand, first thing. Second, the currency. We have countries, especially in Asia, where the currency of the program is a sort of equivalent of the currency of the country. This is Australia. And third, that to my view, and I've been in airlines for a long time, the iconic power of the brand of the airlines in the country. I mean, everyone will give a trust to the points of Air France in France because it's Air France. And this is something that this industry can leverage in this retailing transformation.
Thank you. So one of the things that I've been working a lot on is to understand how we can transform an airline that is in a, let's use the word legacy PSS, that is driven by a lot of standards that were actually built 50 or 60 years ago. And let's name some of those holy cows. Revenue booking designators, fare filing, tickets, EMDs, code share, ADMs, passenger name lists, addition and deletion lists, and a few others. And moving to what Mega's been talking about. But rather than going into that, I'd like to maybe, I would say, put some challenges to my fellow panelists. So I'm gonna go in order across the table here. So I was gonna say to Giello, you talked about comparisons with Starbucks, Nike, and Sephora. Okay, I mean, a lipstick costs 20 euros. Sorry if I got that wrong. Yes. All right. How many pairs of shoes do I buy a year? And how many coffees do I buy a year? So I think we need to, and what I'd really like to understand from you is, what are the pieces of those type of loyalty programs that can be used by the airlines, knowing that the nature of the purchase is completely different in terms of order of magnitude of size and also frequency of purchase. So I think I'd like to understand that. I'm going to kind of go across. I was going to say to my colleagues from McKinsey, use the example of financial services. Financial services is a horribly sticky business. Once you have your insurance with Allianz, you never change. Once you have your bank account, you very, very rarely change. So I think what would be interesting for this audience is also to understand what are the pieces from those loyalty programs that could be useful, knowing that, as we've discussed a lot today, that actually it's not a very sticky purchase when we're talking about leisure travel, especially, you know, if I travel once a year. Okay. And I guess my last challenge to Alexandra at the end is, you talked about an incredibly interesting vision around collecting customer data in real time and then using that. What I'd like to understand from you is what are the challenges in today's environment and today's technology infrastructure and today's standards that are really holding you back, so that we can then have a discussion about what is it potentially in the new world with offers and orders that we can unlock. I apologize for the triple-barreled question, but I'll sort of send it in this direction.
Thank you. Challenge taken. So first and foremost, the lipstick price is off. Inflation is high, and actually, unfortunately, the airline ticket disinflation is also quite high. I recently flew for £11 from London to Portugal, and there are regularly such deals. So I would agree with you that maybe the travel is not as frequent as daily purchase from, you know, Sephora or Starbucks, but I wouldn't agree with you that the pricing is, you know, dramatically off charts. I will just mention this. Airlines need to learn from other sectors, including retail and F&B, on using the correct channels to address the customer. As I mentioned, probably currently your major population will be still booking through the web or through mobile, but 72% of Gen Zs, they are not even going on the web. It is all through Insta, TikTok. And the way they are taking the advice, inspiration for the travel, inspiration for the booking, it's the influencers. I will just give a couple of names, and if you don't mind, raise the hands, because it will be just a little also a survey. So several airlines were doing campaigns, brand campaigns, with the following people. Raise your hand if you know it or name sounds familiar. Emirates, Jennifer Aniston, Penelope Cruz. Rings the bell, right? Etihad, Nicole Kidman. Norwegian, George Clooney. BA, David Beckham. Turkish Airlines, that's a little bit more interesting. Messi, Kobe Bryant, and Kunal Kapoor. Rings the bell. Now I'm going to give you some names. Raise the hand if you know them. Charlie D'Amelio, Emma Chamberlain. Okay, 2 hands, good. Bradman Rock, James Clarks, Jack Morris, Kyla Itzines, okay, maybe, Felix Avid Ulkeber. These are 10 biggest influencers for Gen Z currently, not in 5 years. These people, they are influencing the travel, health, and well-being trends. So this is just the point I'm trying to make, that it's not dramatic, the marketing and pushing the brand is not dramatically different. And just one more thing on finance. Who here has some kind of the co-branded card where you collect the miles, or maybe several of them? Let me guess, it probably will be either the typical American Express or Barclays Visa or some of the mainstream banks like HSBC with the physical brands. So majority of the Gen Z, they can't afford $199 annual charge or $399 for better word in American Express. And their banks are Monzo, Revolut. In US, the biggest bank is now Current. And what these banks are providing, free overdraft, no points expiration, full points transferability, and so on. So my point is that just you have to correctly address your group, you know, to be able to get them on your as your client. And the first card that person, usually the first bank account that person opens, and that's from my previous finance experience, lasts with him majority of his life. So if they have Monzo now, they're not gonna. They might have additional banking account, but they're not gonna drop it off.
Yeah, I think we're not going to change the purchase frequency massively. Of course, people will travel more over time, but there is a bit of a natural limit as to how many vacation days you have or how many days in a year and so on. But at the same time, I think what we're not leveraging at all is the amount of time that we actually have a passenger or a customer almost like as a captive audience between the initial booking or the time that somebody's searching, the time they travel, the time we have them captive in our seats for several hours. Let's also be honest, we're not doing a whole lot with that, right? And I think to me that is the first opportunity to engage more. We know, we've done some research a few years ago that leisure travelers obviously spend or have about 150 touch points with different websites along the way when they decide where they want to go and where they want to book and who they want to book. So there's a ton of opportunity to be very present in that time span and also leverage the opportunities that modern retailing will have going forward to really show more of your content, your cabin, your service functionalities instead of just your price. So I think to me that is the biggest area to focus on. Of course, we might be playing on the edges with the purchase frequency and the ancillary spend and all that, but I think the big opportunity is in those moments that we actually already have, I think.
So before taking the challenge, I would like to comment on the other 2 challenges that you mentioned. It is absolutely true that we have a disadvantage in terms of frequency that we see our customers compared to Sephora or Macy's, or a petrol or a gas station, but we have 2 advantages that they do not have. We sell experiences, not products. So this, by default, is very inspiring for the consumer. We're talking about positive sentiments. We're not talking about petrol or grocery or even a lipstick. So this is a huge advantage for us. The second, we have a very strong currency. So we can make, through this currency, the traveling more affordable for the average consumer. If we capitalize on these 2 factors, I think that we can turn this disadvantage of a small frequency to an advantage. Meaning, so all our strategies should be around how we can keep our loyalty brand at the top of the agenda through partnerships that interact with the customer, that makes our brand interact with the customer on a day-to-day basis, so that when they decide to travel, to choose us against the competitor. And I think this is the fundamental of of loyalty on the contribution of loyalty on the airline industry. How you keep the engagement of the customer at the top of the agenda, even when they do not travel. I will say that last year we introduced a partnership that was, we were also very skeptical on our end. We cooperated through a miles and accrual and redemption process with the biggest provider of electricity in Greece, which was a legacy brand that was making their effort to transform to a more modern brand. The engagement that we saw from the customers was amazing. Our CEO told us, let's do it. Let's do a one-year contract to see how it goes. And when we launched this partnership that it is totally relevant to our industry, we saw a huge engagement with the brand because we introduced our brand to the day-to-day operation, to the day-to-day business of our consumers. Now, moving to the challenge, the technology, I would say we have quite some challenges. Consumers change pretty fast. I will use, we have introduced a customer data platform that is connected to all our channels, communication channels. And I will use one example. The digital team came to us and says, okay, we are integrated with Facebook, with Google, etc. But how about TikTok? I said, TikTok, okay, yes, you are absolutely right. We are not integrated with TikTok. We went to the vendor and said, we do not support integration with TikTok. We're not there yet. So we had to develop a custom integration with TikTok because Gen Z is where we find the Gen Z and are very engaged. Now, moving to retailing, of course, things are more difficult. We have the customer data, and we need to do the transformation to move through a modern offer management system that will be able to absorb this data. Otherwise, the data will be sitting around idle. And this is a huge, I would say, challenge for our industry, how to do it cautiously with the right systems, with the right platforms. And this is a huge transformation that will not happen overnight. Change processes, change mentalities, etc., etc.
Want to comment, Rob?
I do, yes. Thank you very much. So I guess some of the comments that I'd like to make in response to this. Thank you very much. So if you look at today, at least 50% of your customers are coming through indirect channels, and they're not coming directly to your website. And if you look at the infrastructure that exists today that supports those indirect channels, basically the offers are built of three disconnected things. They're built from the schedule that you publish, the fares that you file, and then the availability that comes from your inventory system, which either says an RBD is open or closed. So what you've done is you need to actually condense three different things into an open or closed class, and that is the product, the price, and how many are available. So what that does is it hugely limits the variety and the richness of the offers that you can put through your indirect channels. So with this move to modern retailing and the expansion of the NDC protocol, it will allow you as an airline to be in control of your offer and then be able to put the offer that makes sense through the indirect channels. And you can remove that tight bundle, because the way we see an offer is built of a product. So what are all the elements that are inside an offer? The price. What are the terms and conditions that are linked to that offer? And then also, what are the rewards and benefits? Now, in today's infrastructure, if you want to change any one of those line items, you have to file a new fare, and that fare needs to be available across every single one of your price points and your channels and your stuff like that. So the moving to offers and orders means that you can actually be much more dynamic. So that's one piece that I think should help a lot. The second one is around the openness of the systems. Today's systems tend to be based on quite closed proprietary technology. In tomorrow's world, it needs to be open, easy to code, APIs, cloud native, And these are some of the things that we hope we can do, so that when your team comes to you and says, we want to have an interface with TikTok, we go, no worries, that's fine. Here's the APIs, let's go. They're hosted in the cloud, and off we go. And I think that the last one, and this one was very interesting to me, around the points and paying for the flights and things like that. How close today are revenue management, pricing, and loyalty in order to be able to say, I'm going to adjust this offer because of something I know about the customer in terms of the miles that I would use? For instance, am I going to value a mile at X amount of euros or Y amount of euros, depending on the customer in front of me? And some of the things that we'd like to do with offer and order are going to go in that direction. So I hope we can answer some of those challenges.
I don't remember what I wanted to comment now. No, it was a bit about the TikTok stuff. I mean, and I would comment on what Nina and Anastasia says on different angles. For sure, TikTok or whatever will be invented in the next future remains an acquisition channel. Okay. When I observe my daughter, the way she interacts with TikTok, she's much less loyal than I was 10 years ago with Facebook, okay? And the speed she download, delete apps, it's dramatic. So here is to say, okay, yeah, TikTok is important. Next 2 years, in 2 years they will invent another thing. We will have. It's good that we get used to the generation, because what is coming next is a consumer with different behaviors. Okay, they are digital native, they are used to do more things, and I would not even underestimate the other flip of the life, no? So the life is getting longer. No one is talking about the rich people that get retired, okay? And probably in 20 years from now, we will start targeting the average life, at least in the Western countries, more in the 90. So, but let's park this for now. What I want to comment, so acquisition, it's important, but let's also make sure that once you have acquired the customer, and I was commenting before with Pedro this, what is the effort that we do to retain the customer? And I would, okay, most of you are airlines, but try to observe what is the check-in experience. Check-in experience is close to a transactional, where potentially there you have the customer focus because he wants to check in. You can also stretch a bit, you know, when you have the booking funnel, you don't put too many buzz pop up because you are scared that it drops. At the check-in, I can tell you, you can put every pop-up every 2 seconds. The customer continues to check in. I'm not inviting you to do this, but I'm telling you maybe there is an opportunity there. And there is another angle that is happening in the check-in. 100% of your customers, no matter of the channel, is doing online check-in. I would say the average now it's 90% are doing online or kiosk check-in. What is the investment that the airlines are doing there? So, very poor. Not only the airlines, in general the travel industry. So it means that the airlines spend a lot of time, a lot of money to acquire the customer, and keep retargeting the customer in the acquisition channel rather than the retention channel. When it comes on the retailing transformation, this is probably something to take in consideration, because it's okay to acquire customer, but also it's also worth to retain customers and making sure to be relevant in the moment they interact with your brand.
Actually, on that topic of friction, I do know an
Actually, I was going to say, Danielle, you know we're going to try and kill check-in.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, no, I actually know an airline who used to do automated check-in, added it back because they wanted to add a bit of friction to be able to sell.
Yeah,
so there are airlines who are adding it back, adding friction specifically.
It's an interesting point, actually, because we were speaking to an airline that had actually added upselling at the check-in. And what happened was it actually impacted their operations. So what happens is the check-in agents were trying to sell things to the customers and meant the check-in take longer. So what that means is the plane was delayed, and the cost of the delay then outweighed the small amount of revenue they made from upselling at the airport. But I would say something that I think we need to be very conscious of is there's this concept of the airport window. And the airport window was really driven by the handoff that happened between your reservation system and your check-in system. And your airport window opens, all the tickets move into airport control, and then as soon as someone wants to make a change, you have to offload the passenger. You have to move the ticket out of airport control. So basically it's a very horrible, slow, I would say manual process. And what we see is that check-in as of today is an irrelevant activity, but we should be looking at the journey of the passenger all the way towards getting them to the airport and ready to fly, and what is the appropriate messaging to have with that passenger, preparing for them to travel and have their traveling. So yes, we want to try and kill check-in as it is today, but we want to open the opportunity to retail and interact with the customer all the way to the time that they get on the plane, they're on the plane, and then get off the plane on the other side. So, yep.
So yeah, that's part of why they re-added, they stopped the auto check-in and they focused on what Nicola was saying, the other self-service channels, to be able to pass specific information, especially with the rise of leisure travel. Someone I was talking to yesterday was saying leisure travel is leading to the fact that people aren't as used to processes and what to do next. So they are refocusing on communication on day of departure and getting customers ready to travel. And so that is one reason that this airline stopped the automated check-in and moved back to those channels as well. So there's information and upselling for sure. And I was just about to say, if anyone wants a Gen Alpha, especially you, maybe Alexandra, for influencer. My daughter told me earlier this year, Mum, want to go back to Greece. I was like, okay, ask your father when he comes home. And we went to Greece in May, flew Aegean. And actually thinking about the customer experience, we flew business class, because I don't have a tier level, unfortunately, with Aegean. I'll work towards it. But we flew business class for ease of service. It was just easier with a 3-year-old. So yes, my 3-year-old is ready to promote Greece for you if you want. It worked on us at least. So actually to you, Alexandra, so it's a bit linked to what Rob was saying, but specifically linked to tech and all of these constraints in the current situation today. Are there some things that you would want to be able to do, but you can't because of the complexity of implementing it with the current tech and systems and standards?
I will mention one simple one simple thing, that we have a serious constraint. We have a customer that wants to go from point A to point B. Okay, he has miles, okay, and and at the moment, revenue management was kind enough to provide for this destination that the customer is searching an award ticket. This cannot be, the customer experience that the customer has to go through in order to find this award ticket and utilize his miles is very hectic. I think in the modern retailing, the currency should be either it is an award ticket, either it is an upgrade, either it is a miles and cash service or whatever, should be totally integrated in one single flow without switching buttons, without switching screens. This is a very simple example, yet so complex to be implemented. One area that I believe we should definitely address in the modern retailing. The other area where I think loyalty programs we are still weak is our connection with the indirect channels. I still believe that there is a huge battle between the indirect channels and the loyalty programs on who owns the customer. And the truth is that nobody owns the customer, only the customer owns the customer. So this needs to... I read an article a couple of days ago from an OTA saying forget about miles and go after price. That should not be the case. We are here to serve the customer in the channel that the customer prefers to interact. So whether it is a direct channel or an agent, a travel agent or an OTA, we should be in the position to offer to him an experience that is relevant to his needs and what he's looking for.
No, absolutely, and especially, as you're saying, the customer owns the customer, and with the move towards digital IDs in the EU and things like that, the customer will actually own the customer data, and it will be them that will give you access to it. So something that we are looking at and designing towards as well. But Nicola, I think you wanted to comment.
Yeah, I was commenting, I just have a quick question for you. When you say, okay, technology today partially can make sure that in the same flow, the consumer can access to rewards and revenue flow. Assume that tomorrow Navio will give this capability to you. How do you think the organization in Aegean will change? Who will decide that at that moment, that segment will receive that balance of yield and rewards?
This is a very interesting question, because generally, with this example or with many other examples, the operating model has to change in order to make this happen. We need, the lines between the departments are getting much, much thinner. So we need huge cooperation among the departments. The revenue management sitting together with the analytics team, customer analytics team, to understand opportunities, as Nina said, who is the customer in a specific flight. Even in the same routes, we will find flights that are filled in mostly with leisure price-sensitive customers, and other flights in the same route in the same day that are occupied by business travelers. So pricing of these two flights should not be the same, and should not only be dependent on the competition that is selling at the same time, or the RBDs that I would like to get, and etc., or the families, I'm saying. So this whole change and transition to the new e-retailing, where customer will be at the center, will definitely have to change the way airlines and the companies in general operate. So definitely synergies among the departments, cross-functional cooperation, and exchange of data among each other, so that you can take decisions not only on the reports that, for instance, you have been used to analyze, but also on customer attributes that currently are not that much on the part of the agenda.
Can I just comment? Sorry. I think, coming back to the whole idea of data sharing and intelligence and knowledge about the customer, I think that's critical. And I think most of the commercial organizations we see today, you still have a bit of a conflict, let's say, between pricing, revenue management, and loyalty when it comes to, okay, I actually need to almost like apply for certain rewards that revenue management is going to give to me as loyalty program, and then I can give it to my customers. In reality, of course, it's the same airline, same customers, but fine. So this is still a question of, okay, what's better? Is it the redemption of an award or any opportunity to invest into the long-term relationship with the customer versus the revenue at hand right here for the booking? So I still see that not very resolved for most airlines, but I do suspect that the realization is going to come quickly how important the data of the customer actually is when you move to a world where you produce dynamic offers, which arguably is a whole lot more opaque than what we have today. So this whole question of, is my offer actually attractive? You're not going to do that with pricing intelligence and with checking your competitors' websites, right? So there is I think the role for loyalty in that construct will be tremendous, because that's probably your best source to understand whether your offer is really good.
So yeah, to be able to balance that longer term customer lifetime value, as we've been discussing, and you were saying you've moved towards a customer value approach with the individual flight.
To comment on Nina, I fully agree. What data has shown us that redemptions is not a competitor to revenue. It's actually a contributor to revenue. And this is what we always communicate to revenue management. And I'm very happy because we have convinced them. Because looking at the long-term impact, you see that once customers realize or get the benefit of redemption, the customer engagement and the customer value extraction is increasing drastically. So I fully agree that redemptions are a contributor to revenue. We see customers redeeming one segment and buying another 5 segments. So we see that when we do huge campaigns, we also see a spike on redemptions because customers are there to buy and to optimize the cost of their trip. If we treat it as such and not as a free ticket that I get nothing, then the overall engagement, the overall impact in the longer term would be tremendous.
Anastasia, I think.
Just to add on this one. So this year, 2024 in January, when we asked the largest airlines globally on what is the biggest challenge with your loyalty program, the number one was availability of rewards for redemptions. Just not enough seats that they can get from their main operations. 2 takeaways from our conference in Miami on 2 Latin American airlines, how they solve it. So the first one is Volaris, which is an ultra low-cost carrier in Mexico. And so what they did, they have a head of digital marketing. And under this head, the whole revenue management comes in, whether from the main business operations, auxiliaries, all of the loyalty programs. So it's literally his team decides how to allocate rewards, when to push the cash sales, when to push loyalty sales. So that's one way. I think it's much easier to do in the smaller, maybe lean airline rather than in Emirates or BA, where you have the legacy teams, which needs to be restructured. But that's one of the ways. The second one is Sky Airline from Chile and Peru, who recently launched their loyalty program. They are a Glow member, based on blockchain. And that can resolve the issue of the dynamic pricing as well as availability of rewards. On their loyalty program, it's not the airline which owns miles, it is the customer that owns miles. So it's not an IOU, formal IOU, the liability that you record on your balance sheet that I need to fly this guy within 2 years, and if he doesn't fly, I write it off. Right, my gain. But it's actually the customer who owns the reward, and he has full flexibility of how he wants to spend it. So he has transparency. There is no opacity of how much it's worth, and then there is no shortage of redemption points because he spends it through the whole partnership network. So just 2 examples of how.
Okay, thank you. And another question I might have for you, Alexandra, is, so there's the flight seat issue for availability, but do you see the smaller rewards becoming more important, like being able to purchase a lounge access with miles to keep that engagement, or does it not have the same kind of impact, or does it help with this less frequent travel?
I think that the vast majority of our customers want to reduce the cost of the fare. We have launched Miles and Cash, and we have seen a tremendous takeover by our customers, the least engaged customers. If they even spent 2,000 miles to get 5-10 euros, whatever the rate is. So I believe that the vast majority of the consumers want to spend their miles to reduce the cost of their trip, particularly the leisure travelers. We don't see that much of appetite in ancillary products, for instance. We try to push them, but we do not see customer appetite on that. While the Miles and Cash, we set it up very simply, and we saw a huge uplift from day one.
Okay, super interesting. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? This one? Okay. So, moving on a little of that, we did touch upon it a bit about the ownership of the customer data sharing. We know that over time, NDC might help us better understand who the customer is. Dynamic offers will help us better segment the offer that is returned. But do you see any way that the industry might move towards more trust between the different business partners and data sharing to get better offers, or do you feel that that's insurmountable in the medium term? So I'd ask any of our colleagues about that kind of data sharing across the industry and how that links maybe to partnerships.
I think here it depends which generation you ask. Because if you ask us, my generation, which I'm already in the Jurassic era, I start saying the privacy. I start saying, who knows what they will do with my data? No, this is a bit what we always suspect when we click the box, I accept. By the way, I will invite you to download the terms and conditions of TikTok. Scaring. Okay? Do it. Normally we don't do. I did. Scaring. When you ask the same question to my daughter, she doesn't care. As long as she knows that she receives value, she can remove her data forever from that brand, and she feels to have full control of that. And I would add another thing. Consumer of the next generation will be available to share data also if you reward them. Today there is the big brands, okay, Facebook, those people, they give a lot of service for free, but you know, if you, as it says, if it's for free, you are the product. Still, I think there is an opportunity that if you reward the customer, they can be more open to share data. And today, the benefit of is gaining about the data, the consumer has a little stake there.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment as well. I think it's important to differentiate a little bit, like what is contextual information from the history of a relationship between, you know, partners and also their common customers. I think, you know, typically there's less concern there on just like themes, patterns, clusters that you see. I think what is, of course, also regulatory-wise a whole different topic is anything that is personally identifiable information that, you know, I think will not move over that and shouldn't move over that. But I think there's so much to gain from just the context. I mean, I often use this example, you know, if I'm traveling with, you know, 4 people, 2 of them are children, 2 weeks to a sunny destination, I don't need to know that this person is called Nina to figure out that this is a family with children going on holiday, right? So I
use the same example.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. So it's not that difficult, even if you don't have all of that data. So I think to me that is critical to move a little bit above, like what's personal information versus what is context information. And that's where I typically see a lot of openness, especially if you're clear on what are you using it for. And I think that's the same for customers. There are tons of surveys out there that say customers are actually willing to share information if they see benefit from that. If you share your phone number with an airline, but you never get contacted in case of delays or issues, then of course that's frustrating, and then you're questioning why do they actually need it for if they don't need it for such a situation. So I think in terms of like making this easier for customers, I think it's showing them what do you use this information for, how does it have a benefit, how does it help you as a customer in having a better experience, and you're not treated as, you know, somebody that gets sold to.
May I add just one takeaway from the Retail Congress loyalty panel. If I ask you a question, it's a quiz. Can you please name a male living in UK in his 70s who loves gardening? The most famous person. And one of his titles comes as the king. Who comes to mind? King Charles, right? But actually, it's Ozzy Osbourne, because he is king of rock. He is in 70s. He loves gardening. So how do you? This is the type of information we will get from the data points. How do you market to King Charles, and how do you market to Ozzy Osbourne? Is your offering is going to be the same? No. So that shows the limits, yeah, of the quality of data that we are getting. So even if we have, you know, either it has to be much more granular, or it has to be integrated with the payment providers, which give you a little bit more context, or with some of the social platform for the younger generation, on who are you approaching to be able to market properly.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Because I have seen more and more, let's say, retailing loyalty programs that do just ask you, I'll give you some points if you tell me your birthday. And then, of course, they contact you with a discount on your birthday. And it's just that constant engagement that I feel we're not doing as much on the airline side. But to be seen. OK, so then we wanted to discuss which opportunities do you see in modern retailing that can benefit loyalty? So not just loyalty benefiting modern retailing, but what can benefit loyalty and what can help you with potentially driving that customer lifetime value? So maybe I'll start with our airline, Aegean Airlines.
I think this is a cycle. It's not one benefits the other. So if you offer through the modern retailing the right product to the right customer, this will eventually increase customer engagement and customer lifetime value. So it's a cycle. When you design a product that is relevant to consumers, either it is a bundle while they book a ticket when they travel with their kids, or either it is a dynamic pricing that is more relevant to their financials. It's all coming back to customer engagement and customer loyalty.
Yeah, from my perspective, retailing is of course also fueling loyalty in the sense that it, basically creates a much more granular, a broader offering from the airline that you can then use to create engagement through the loyalty, and then basically, bring the customers back to the airline once they're ready to travel again. So to me, it just creates multiple more options to basically feed loyalty and engagement, and basically create more of that cycle that you mentioned. So I think just like the content availability through retailing and the visibility of the actual product, I think is tremendous.
I'll be a little bit controversial, and I actually think that loyalty comes first. Airlines margins are so thin, between 2 to 5% mostly, that unfortunately they have to do retailing to be able, to increase the revenue. Unfortunately, most of our traditional main carriers became almost like ultra low cost, and you have to pay for bag, you have to pay for seat, So if the profitability after fuel and labor costs was higher, we didn't need to do this per se. But I think that retailing can be one of the channels to increase the loyalty if the product is right and if the targeting is right. Or, to be honest, it can be very costly exercise, which very little output. Because the one thing that I think majority of us do not need, another, flying mall with everything from bicycles to tables made from former aircraft wings, which are sold to us as sustainability product, right? So,
I kind of want one though, now you've said that.
That's one of the German airlines that does it, so it's one of the key features of sustainability push, which is respectable, right? But probably that's not the product that I would be really generally excited. So I think honestly, loyalty comes first, and loyalty is so overarching across all of the customer experience, from the moment you buy, from the moment you disembark and after, and think about your next trip. And that goes back to Nina's point about the opportunities that loyalty programs missed when dealing with the disruptions and delays. And I had 4 disruptions in the last 2 months, and none of these opportunities was used by the airline to push the loyalty program or link to the loyalty program. They just chuck off the compensation and thank you very much, we don't care what happens next. So loyalty comes first, retailing is just an opportunity.
Rob, you might have an opinion?
I do, and I'm actually going to build on what you just said around servicing. Because one of the real pain points that customers have is, flight is delayed, and you go and speak to someone and they say, oh no, I'm sorry, that was a code-share flight, it's not me. And then you go to the other airline, they say, oh no, I'm sorry, that was booked through a travel agency, that's not me. Call the travel agency. Travel agency is based in the country where it's the opposite time zone and they don't do anything for you. So I would say the big opportunity beyond maybe some incremental revenue is around delivering on the passenger experience, around servicing, and especially when things don't go according to plan. If the passenger can self-service, I think that leads to a much better experience than waiting in a line, hoping that someone will fix their booking.
Nicola, maybe?
I agree. I think the biggest immediate and visible opportunity is the way airlines can serve the customer. Because, retailing for sure, the retailing technique for sure will bring a bit of opacity in the way customer access to the offer, which, by the way, it's a good thing, because I think this industry is the only one that is so transparent in the way we sell things. I agree with you, is the retailing technology, but together technology, the processes and the organization change, will help airlines to serve better the customer, because you will have more opportunity to react to disruption along the journey. I would say at scale. I think most of us have been in disruption moment. I mean, that's really miserable. And probably even if you don't want to go there, flight cancel. Have you ever seen the guy that is the last one waiting for the bag? He's such a loser, no? You see that, and the airlines knows since the aircraft took off.
I've been that loser, thank you, last year.
Yeah, but why the airlines? And I've been twice. You feel such a loser because you see, why me?
So you see the queue over
and
there.
and they know already. So those small things, I think, really will improve dramatically the way airlines brands interact with customers.
Yeah, bad memories of traveling away in Greece with no bags, and for me or my daughter, it wasn't you guys. It was someone else who I won't name, but yeah, never flying them again. Okay, so back to the retailing transformation. So I want to come back to something you were saying, Anastasia, about segmentation and personalization, and maybe ask you as a panel thing, where do you want to use more granular segmentation versus, the high-level business leisure that we have today? And in which situations would you see value in going down to a more personal level? So is it by use case? Is it you don't want... I'm hearing a lot from airlines, they don't want to play with the price because of discrimination. You don't want to do too much dynamic pricing. But where would you be using segmentation and personalization? Is it in the offer build, in the offer ranking, in proactive offer targeting, maybe via different channels? Where is your focus, and where do you see value in segmentation, personalization, and where do you keep a one-size-fits-all?
One-size-fits-all is not bad, meaning that there needs to be an underlying basis. So unless you need to have a very strong product, on-time performance to be good, your booking engine to be solid. So you definitely need a solid underlying product. And then you need to start adding segments-based offering. So gold customer traveling alone for business versus a gold customer traveling with the family has totally different needs. So you need to be able to have products that address this difference in the needs. For instance, in Aegean, we have a strategy saying that we attract the customer from newborn, and we want to have a tailored proposition in our loyalty program. When the customer grows, goes to Generation Z, we have a switch in our offering for the 18 to 25 years old customers to be more relevant, and then we start talking to the customer separately. If it's an expat, if it's a business, if it's a private company, a small company owner, or it's a corporate customer, etc., etc. So you need the underlying good product, then you need a segment-based product offering, and then you need, on top, elements of personalization across the entire customer journey, I would say, not only for marketing, not only for customer experience. You need to be able to offer, when a disruption comes, to differentiate your strategy, and to customers that are severely disrupted, and this disruption is coming as the fourth disruption in a month, let's say, and these are customers that travel to you very, very frequently. You need to be able to identify them at the time of the disruption and be able to offer them something unique to mitigate for the fourth disruption in a row. So segmentation is coming and personalization is coming to optimize the customer experience across the entire customer journey, from the marketing, where you can promote tailor-made offering, to the customer experience, and of course, when disruption or irregularity happen.
Perfect.
I do think the easiest way to get started is to basically test different types of communications and different types of channels for the people that are on your channels and in your sort of customer database, as to test, okay, when do I engage on a promotion? When do I engage on an, I don't know, summer deals or something? I think that's relatively easy. Most platforms allow you to do that with very limited expansion of capabilities. And I also think that, similar to that engagement, the ancillary, upsell, cross-sell opportunities between initial booking and departure is something that, you know, allows you to build that intelligence and that segmentation, because otherwise I think the idea of moving to a segmentation that is n=1 is oftentimes too hard and maybe not necessary for the things that we can do with it. So we often use like a micro-segmentation approach that is not, I'm a business traveler, leisure traveler, because it just doesn't derive any recommendation and action. But, you know, once you get to segments like, you know, I don't know, I live in Germany and I have a second house on the French Riviera, I'm making it up. You know, I might be more open to, I don't know, deals for Fridays to Sundays versus 2-week trips. Like, you know, if I get to that level, and it's less about socio-demographic factors usually, it's a lot more about behavior. And those insights that I just mentioned as an example, they allow your marketing teams to come up with specific campaigns. They allow your pricing teams to make specific recommendations. So it's a lot more actionable than saying somebody's a business versus a leisure traveler.
Thank you. I think that the first and foremost loyalty programs for all of the airlines is a gold mine. So, but the way, I agree with Nina, we don't approach it on business versus leisure, but I think we need to start approaching the customer through their life journey. We have tons of information, especially if you're a loyalty customer, whether it travels alone, with family, with partner, with 2 bags or 1 bag. There is trends. And there is probably 4 or 5 types or, you know, patterns across most of your customers that you can utilize. For example, if you are, let's say, a family of 4 and you really collect companion vouchers, you know that if you travel with 2 kids, that it will be school holidays or, you know, particular patterns that you will hit these vouchers for. So please don't offer me adult-only trip to Iceland, you know, in February, when previous 3 years, you knew I went to the southern country. And at the same time, so for example, with that's an example from real life from one of the airlines. When the voucher comes to close to expiration 2 months, I shouldn't be spending 5 hours searching through availability on your website just to find, you know, 3 flights. Nobody even comes proactively and says your voucher is expiring, you know. So I think that the loyalty program is already gold mine, but just try to adjust the offering with the life terms of the customer as he goes.
Maybe Rob, last comment, because then we need to wrap up. Oh, sorry, and Nicola, you can have a go.
No.
That's fine. I think it's true. I've been targeted because I live here in Nice. A number of airlines send me advertising saying, please fly to Nice for your summer holiday, which is a little weird, but okay. No, look, I think on our side, I'm going to answer in 2 different dimensions. The first is, when looking at contextualization, I would propose that you start with price first and then product. Price is the thing that you can get more benefits easily. The second thing is you need to look at the cost of the channel. Some channels are going to be very expensive in terms of processing costs, and others are going to be cheaper. So think about the cost of the channel before you, I would say, start to get very excited in terms of how personalized your offer is.
Okay. So maybe just to then recap, I would just ask you all, where do you start? What are the 3 things that you can start on this change to modern retailing as a loyalty or as an airline, a loyalty program or an airline? Maybe Alexandra, I'd start with you because you've started on this process and you touched upon it earlier already.
The first thing is that you need to do some organizational changes. As you said, there is this digital, the chief digital officer now that is having all the departments underneath so that you have synergy. So you do need to have changes in the organizational structure to support this new era. Then you have to find the new skill sets, to develop new skill sets. Pretty recently that we launched our customer data platform and the whole ecosystem around the customer data platform, we realized that we needed to change the role of some marketeers. And we start looking for this specialization called MarTech, marketing technology, that actually they operate marketing systems, they deliver marketing campaigns, but they are not marketeers. They are mostly engineers or mathematicians that they do so. So you need to find the right skill set to support all this new technology that is coming in, and definitely work a lot on the cross-functional cooperation, because the lines are getting very, very thin. For instance, MarTech team is doing part of what digital team was doing at the past. Similarly, the customer analytics team may also do some things that the revenue management analytics team was doing at the past. So the cross-functional cooperation is a must, and it must be infused as a culture change by top management.
I'll keep it short. I think the audience deserves a coffee break. But first, I think bringing loyalty closer to the core of the airline business. I think second to me is start exploring the data and leveraging the data that you have through the loyalty program, for example, in your commercial or operational functions. And I think the third bit is really expanding the partnerships to make sure you keep relevance and engagement.
Can't agree more with Alexandra, with Nina. Definitely top priority. Just to throw a curveball, just download Times 100 most influential under 25s and start looking at the names and what are these people promoting and what are their values.
I have to say, remember, it's still us who are paying for the Gen Alpha travel, just remember. All right, so I'd say the first thing is education. Learn everything you can. The second one is engage with your top management, have a very frank conversation about the burning platform and the need and desire to change. And the third thing is speak to your technology providers and your partners today, because maybe there is latent capability in the systems you've already contracted that can be unlocked very quickly to get early gains.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. It depends the airlines where you are. I think what I keep advocating strongly is make sure that all the organization make always obsessively the question, does it make sense for the customer, whatever you do? And if the answer is yes, go. That's where I would start, to make sure that everyone in the organization makes these constantly questions if it makes sense for the customer.
Okay, great. So I think we're out of time. So you can always come and talk to them during the break and ask your questions and get feedback. I guess a lot to learn from Alexandra as well, of course, having started on this transformation. So thank you everyone for your time, and coffee break. Yes.